Memphis, 1975. Minutes before the curtain rose, Elvis stopped in his tracks. By the loading dock, a small, trembling dog, ribs showing, stared up at him. He set down his guitar case. The crowd was already chanting his name, "Stay with me." Because what happened between Elvis and that little dog became a story fans still talk about, one that proves kindness can change more than one life. The slam of a metal door echoed through the concrete corridor. Gear cases rattled past, the smell of diesel seeping in from the loading dock. Elvis was less than 3 minutes from stepping on stage in Memphis, but something in the shadows stopped him cold. He'd just rounded the corner toward the stage entrance when a roadie's boot caught on. The man stumbled forward, cursing under his breath. Elvis's eyes followed the motion down and saw it. A small brown dog, thin as wire, fur matted, pressed tight against the wall like it was trying to disappear. Its ribs rose and fell fast. "No, collar, no, tag." Just 2 dark eyes locked on his dot. The announcer's voice boomed through the walls. "Ladies and gentlemen, the king of rock and roll." The sound rolled over them like thunder, but Elvis didn't move. He crouched, the white sleeve of his jumpsuit brushing the gritty floor. Witnesses say he reached out slowly, hand steady, palm open. The dog didn't flinch, didn't move at all until his fingers touched its head. Then, barely, it leaned into his hand. The air back here was thick, hot lights bleeding in from the stage door, the faint tang of popcorn from the concession stands, the sour bite of motor oil from the trucks outside. It was a place meant for movement, not pauses. But Elvis stayed there, kneeling. A security guard stepped forward. "Sir, they're ready for you." Elvis didn't even look up. "Give me a minute." From the stage, the first notes of the band's vamp leaked through his cue to be in position. The roar of the crowd grew, a single wave of sound demanding his presence. Instead, he spoke softly to the dog. "Where'd you come from, little fella?" His voice barely cut through the hallway noise, but those nearby remember the tone. Not a performer talking, but a man meeting a soul in need. The dog blinked, its whole body trembling. Elvis glanced toward the stage entrance, then back to the animal. It was like watching a scale tip. Security tried again. "Elvis, we've got to move." He shook his head, eyes still on the dog. "No, not yet." This was the Mid-South Coliseum, summer of 1975, a night with 18,000 people waiting, and the king himself choosing to spend precious seconds in a loading dock hallway. Finally, Elvis straightened. He didn't turn toward the stage. He bent down, slipped his arms under the dog, and lifted it gently against his chest. The crowd's chant hit a fever pitch, and Elvis took a step, but it wasn't toward the music. The crowd was chanting his name in unison now, shaking the walls. But in the narrow backstage hallway, Elvis was standing still, a microphone in one hand, a shivering stray dog in the other. The corridor lights buzzed overhead, flickering in places. Every step forward meant squeezing past crates of coiled cables, water-stained set lists taped to the wall, and the heat from stage floodlights seeping through the door ahead. Sonny West, his longtime bodyguard, leaned in. "Boss, that band intro's almost done." Elvis shifted the mic to his right hand, freeing his left to keep stroking the dog's head. His fingers brushed over sharp ribs beneath the fur. "His skin and bones," Elvis said quietly. A stagehand jogged past, eyes darting from the king to the animal. "We're rolling your cue, sir." Elvis didn't move. He lowered his head until it was level with the dog's. The animal sniffed, then pressed its nose against his chin and licked, quick and unsure. Someone down the hall laughed softly in disbelief. This was Elvis Presley, the man who never missed a beat, and yet, right now, he seemed in no hurry to meet the roar outside. The smell of dust and hairspray hung in the air. From the other side of the wall came the muffled thump of the bass, the faint scream of guitar strings warming up. The floor beneath Elvis's boots vibrated with every kick drum. Elvis finally spoke again, to Sonny. "Ain't no way I'm leaving." Him back here, his voice had the same weight as when he called for a key change on stage. Final and unarguable. Sonny gave a single nod. "Then we take him with us." Elvis glanced toward the stage door. The spotlight beyond threw a narrow beam into the hallway, dust motes drifting through it like slow snow. He stepped forward, dog cradled close. Passing under that light for the first time, a photographer for a local paper, waiting in the wings for his shot of Elvis's grand entrance, would later swear that the very first frame he caught that night was of the king holding that dog, not his guitar. The MC's voice hit the final build-up. The one, the only, Elvis Presley. The band slammed into the opening chords. Elvis was at the curtain now, a single step from the stage, and the dog's head was resting over his forearm, eyes blinking at the light. Instead of handing the animal off to Sonny, Elvis pulled the mic cable forward with his free hand. The next second would rewrite how this show was remembered. The curtain snapped open. A wall of light hit him, and in front of 18,000 people, Elvis Presley stepped onto the stage with a dog in his arms. The spotlight cut across them, turning the dog's fur into a haloed brown glow. Gasps broke through the opening cheers, rippling from the front rows back toward the rafters. Elvis didn't rush to his mark. He walked slow, mic cable trailing, boots clicking against the polished stage. The band kept vamping, Jerry Chef's bars line rolling low, the sweet inspirations glancing at each other with raised brows. He stopped center stage, eyes scanning the crowd, the dog perched against his hip like it had always belonged there. "You all mind if we got one more guest tonight?" he said into the mic, voice warm, teasing. The crowd roared back in approval. He set the dog gently on a tall stool beside his mic stand. One hand stayed near its back, steadying it as the animal looked out over the sea of faces. The dog's ears perked when the drums tapped the song's intro. Elvis smiled at the reaction, nodded to the band, and eased into Can't Help Falling. In Love, halfway through the first verse, he paused. A hush fell. He glanced down at the dog, then looked back at the audience. Some say this was the moment he changed a line, swapping in a word or two that turned the love song into something meant for his little four-legged companion. The crowd laughed, a sound almost as loud as the applause. Camera flashes burst like tiny fireworks. Somewhere in the lower rows, a child clapped along. The air was thick with perfume, popcorn, salt, and the electric heat of thousands leaning forward. Elvis sang the last line, softer than usual, almost a lullaby. As the final chord rang out, the dog simply sat, tail tucked but calm, gazing at him. The applause was instant, a wall of sound that shook the stage. According to fans who were there, Elvis reached down, brushed his scarf over the dog's head in a light touch, and whispered something only it could hear. He gave a quick nod to the band and launched straight into the next song. Without moving the dog from the stool, the question in every mind that night wasn't whether the king could still command a crowd. It was, What would happen to that dog? When the music stopped, the final chord rang out. The curtain swept closed, and the roar of 18,000 people was replaced by the thud of footsteps and the hiss of the amps powering down. Backstage smelled different now, less popcorn and perfume, more sweat and hot leather from the worn couch in Elvis's dressing room. The dog was still in his arms, its body loose now, head tucked under his chin as though it had decided this was safe ground. Sonny West closed the door behind them, blocking out the muffled post-show chaos. Elvis lowered himself into the chair. In front of the light-trimmed mirror, the dog still against his chest. He reached up, untied the scarf from his neck, damp from the heat of the lights, and looped it gently around the dog's. "There you go, buddy," he murmured. "You're dressed for the occasion." A soft knock came. A woman stepped in, not a fan looking for an autograph, but someone who'd been in the front row earlier. She introduced herself as working with the Memphis Humane Society. "If you'd like, Mr. Presley, I can take him to the shelter tonight. We'll find him a home." Elvis shook his head before she even finished. "No, he's not going anywhere. I can't see him." Joe Esposito was leaning against the wall, watching. Years later, he'd recall Elvis turning to him with that look, the one that meant there was no debate. "Fix him up, Joe. Get him food, get him looked at, and find him a name." The dog stirred at the word name, lifting its head. Elvis smiled, something dignified. Like the Colonel, a chuckle rolled through the room. Even the Humane Society rep cracked a grin. Outside the door, you could still hear the faint echo of fans chanting in the parking lot, unwilling to let the night end. Elvis leaned back, stroking the dog's head with slow, steady passes. "Colonel, it is," he said finally. Sonny reached for the dog, offering to carry it out to the car while Elvis got changed. Elvis hesitated, looking down into those dark eyes one more time. "Make sure he rides up front," he told Sonny. "He's earned that much." The dressing room door swung open, and the cold night air rolled in. The scarf shifted slightly as the dog was carried out, the first step into a life no one in that room could yet imagine. 7 days later, Elvis wasn't in the headlines for a new record or a sold-out tour. The papers were talking about a dog. According to the Memphis Pressimeter, Elvis Presley had covered the vet bills for a stray he'd found backstage, purchased supplies and arranged for the dog, now officially named Colonel, to live on the grounds of Graceland with a trusted friend. The first photo the public saw wasn't of Elvis on stage. It was him on the Graceland lawn, hair tousled, sunglasses low on his nose, crouching beside Colonel while the dog sniffed at a guitar case. Elvis's hand rested lightly on the dog's back, steady, claiming. Once the story broke, something unexpected happened. Fan mail began arriving, not just for Elvis, but addressed directly to Colonel Presley. Bright envelopes with paw print stickers, packages with squeaky toys, scarves, blankets. A few even came with Polaroids of fans holding their own rescue dogs. Inspired by what they'd read, inside the fan club's monthly newsletter, a special page appeared. Meet Colonel Elvis's newest friend. The photo showed the dog wearing the same stage scarf Elvis had tied around his neck that night. But Elvis didn't just let the attention pass. At his very next show, a week after the article, he took a moment between songs, looked out over the audience, and said, "This one's for all the strays out there who need a little love." The band launched into a softer number. Some say his voice had an extra warmth that night, the kind you only hear when someone's singing straight from the heart. The house lights were low, the stage washed in blue. Somewhere in the first few rows, a woman cradled a small dog wrapped in a blanket, swaying in time with the music. The scent of cigarette smoke curled in the air, mixing with the faint sweetness of spilled cola on the floorboards. Mid-song, a projection screen behind him lit up with the image of Colonel, shot earlier that week at Graceland, lying in the grass with the mansion in soft focus behind him. The crowd erupted applause, whistles, a few tears. Elvis smiled at the screen, finished the last line, and let the applause wash over him. Backstage after that concert, Joe Esposito told Sonny, "You know this dog's famous now, right?" Sonny just nodded. The question was no longer whether Colonel had a home. It was how far this simple act of kindness was going to travel. Years later, Sonny West would still smile when someone mentioned Colonel. He wasn't just a dog, Sonny would say. He was part of the family. By all accounts, Colonel spent the rest of his life on the Graceland property, cared for by one of Elvis's close friends. The dog could often be spotted lounging on the wide front porch during summer barbecues, or trotting beside a golf cart as staff made their rounds. Visitors remembered the way Elvis would point him out during private gatherings. "That's the Colonel, the only one I take orders from." It always got a laugh. The story of that backstage rescue kept resurfacing. When the Memphis Humane Society looked back at their records from that year, they found something unusual. Adoption rates had surged in the weeks after the newspaper article ran. Local shelters received donations from as far away as California, often with notes that read, "For the Colonels out there." Some who visited Graceland swore they could still see Colonel's scarf framed in a small display case near the kitchen. The fabric was worn, faintly smelling of cedar from the shadow box, but the red still popped against the pale lining. When Elvis passed in 1977, Colonel was still living just steps from the mansion. According to friends, the dog wandered the porch for days, sleeping in spots where Elvis used to sit. No one knew if animals understood loss in the same way people did, but those who saw it didn't doubt for a second. Not long after, a black and white photo began circulating among fans. Elvis kneeling in that backstage hallway in 1975, hand on the dog's head. The edges of the frame were rough, but the moment inside it was clear. A king taking a pause to kneel for something smaller. One scarf, one pause before a show. And the life of an animal, plus the hearts of thousands, shifted course. Forever for the family who cared for Colonel. He became a symbol of unexpected blessings, the kind that arrive quietly and change everything. Kindness, especially when it costs you time you think you don't have, is the kind people never forget. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes compassion can stop the show. And tell me in the comments, what's the smallest act of kindness you've seen that made the biggest difference?